Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 4th of July, 2022. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So just a quick reminder here that I'll be hosting this live stream with the ETH Staker crew for the Sepolia testnet merge. Now, I did mention last time we didn't know exactly when it was going to take place just because of the hash rate changes, and I could bring up the website here that I looked at last week that you can monitor the hash rate changes on. So it's bordel.wtf. So basically we want to get TTD, we want to achieve TTD by Wednesday, July 6th at 4 p.m. I think that's, 4 p.m. UTC or 4:45 p.m. UTC here. So to do that, we need to maintain the kind of hash rate that we have now, which is essentially what we're doing. So I think that some more hash rate came online from either kind of like some of the core teams or just a good benefactor here that allows us to kind of reach TTD by that time. But if people decide to join with their hash, this could happen sooner, or if someone decides to pull out, it could happen later. So we don't know exactly what time, but here is the expected time right now, Wednesday, July 6th, 4:45 p.m. UTC. But you can definitely check back at this site and keep checking Twitter for an update there. But if you want, you can also go to the live stream link here and kind of set a reminder so that you're basically told as soon as the live stream happens. All right, so speaking of the merge, there's a couple of things to get through. So the mainnet merge, Shadow Fork 8 is happening tomorrow, 5th of July. So this is going to be exciting. I guess like we've done 7 of these so far, and most of them have run pretty well. This will be the 8th one. Hopefully, look, I would really love to see one of these mainnet Shadow Forks go like 100%, right? Like no issues, no merge or non-merge related issues on any of the clients. Like imagine if we had all the clients talking to each other and it was all 100%. That'd be really, really cool to see. I mentioned before how some of them had some issues around kind of like configurations, non-merge related stuff. That isn't a deal breaker, but it would still be really cool to see 100% there. So there's that happening tomorrow, and then as I just mentioned a couple of days later, the Sepolia testnet transition will happen, and then we'll have Girly. So Girly is a bit different in that we don't have to basically rely on hash rate because Girly is a proof of authority network, so that'll be easier to merge in terms of like timing. I expect that probably late July at this point, if not early August or something like that. If it happens late July, that gives us a nice amount of time until kind of obviously December to get to mainnet merge, and we can do some shadow forks in that time as well. But I feel like we're just, like, I know I say this a lot, but, like, we're so close. So close. Mid-September is still my estimation or still my kind of, like, guesstimation at this point. But I'm not going to rehash that there, as you guys have heard me talk about this a million times before. But speaking of staking, Jasek here basically put out a tweet today saying, so what can you do with the new light client protocol getting merged into ETH2? Nimbus now has a light client implementation that allows safely determining the head of the chain at 20 to 30 bytes per second, but on its own. That's not very useful. Enter the light proxy. So basically this thread is about light clients and kind of like how Nimbus's approach to this and how they're working towards this. Light clients are basically the concept of being able to validate the chain without having to store the whole chain on your device. Now, why would you want this? Well, it's good for stuff like kind of like running a light client on like a smartphone, for example, like a bandwidth limited and a hardware limited device, but even just generally being able to essentially use kind of like a light client to validate that the chain that you're kind of like talking to is the valid one, instead of having to kind of run through the whole thing and have like a full node running or something like that, is obviously very powerful. It's something that's been spoken about for a while now. It's something that other networks have also looked at. I believe Polkadot was really big on light client design. I'm not sure what status they're at yet, but it's definitely been talked about in Ethereum for a very long time now, and it seems there are things in motion, which is very, very cool to see. So you can go read this thread. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. Second thing on staking is that Hildobby has added some stats to his ETH2 staking deposits dashboard. It now includes top deposited amount, liquid staking market share, entity breakdown, category breakdown, staking market share, and more. Now, this is probably my favorite dashboard. I think it is my favorite dashboard at this point for keeping up with Beacon Chain related statistics here, ETH2 staking kind of like statistics. You can see all sorts of information, like really, really good information, like obviously ETH deposited, validator share, liquid staking share, Lido share, all these sorts of stuff. And I've talked about it before on the refill, so I won't rehash it again. But yeah, like you can go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description. But it's great to see that Hildobby has updated this with more relevant stats for us. All right, so Superphiz put out a really, really great tweet that really resonated with me. I think he put this out yesterday, where he said, Ethereans need to begin preparing media and informational packages for local media outlets now. The merge will change everything the media knows about Ethereum's power use, and we have an opportunity to support them with clips, sound bites, pics, and graphics. Everything's changing. The reason why this resonated with me so much is because it's something that I talk a lot about on the Refuel, right? I talk about narratives, I talk about how the transition to proof of stake, while it won't have an immediate effect, it will have an effect on the narrative of Ethereum and the narrative probably crypto more broadly, because Ethereum, obviously the second largest proof of work network, will no longer be proof of work. Ethereum will be a green network. It will be using 99.95% less energy, probably even more than that, or even kind of like less than that, right? And kind of like, I think that's going to be a very, very positive narrative that plays out in the mainstream, especially because every single time I go on, say a Reddit thread that's talking about crypto, and I'm not talking about the crypto subreddits, I'm talking about like just the generic subreddits, or I go to some kind of like comments on a post that's got nothing to do with crypto, but crypto somehow brought up. Like 9 times out of 10, someone will mention the energy usage, and someone will mention how it's boiling the oceans and destroying the planet and this and that and the other, right? So obviously crypto has not only a bad image problem just generally, but like a very, very bad problem with the people who care about the environment. And typically those people are definitely on the younger side, and they're the ones that we definitely want to be adopting this technology. We want them to be joining our ecosystem. We want them to be part of this kind of like mission. We don't want them getting the wrong idea, but they're not going to join. They're not going to use this stuff. They're actually very ideologically opposed to it simply because of the use of proof of work instead of something more efficient. So I think that's the reason why a lot of people don't like Bitcoin as well outside of the ecosystem. Obviously, it still applies to Ethereum today, but once we merge, it no longer applies. So we have an opportunity to have like this massive media push, this massive mainstream media push to get the news out there, to make sure people are aware that Ethereum is no longer proof of work, it is proof of stake. Now, of course, people are still going to hate Ethereum for various other reasons, right? They're going to hate it because of NFTs. They're going to hate it because they probably just think it has no value. But at least those kind of like narratives, I think, are not, because they're not based on kind of like fact and reality. Pretty much none of the points that I've seen, except that they're always going about the speculative activity, which I'm going to talk about in a bit, but I'll get to that in a sec. We have just an opportunity to change the kind of like their thinking and their view of Ethereum's kind of like energy use, which I think is really, really cool. Now, we don't have to explain to them what proof of stake kind of like is, how Ethereum proof of stake is superior to other ones. We don't have to explain what validators are. We don't have to explain the 32 ETH minimum, none of that sort of stuff. All we have to do is be very clear in our message that Ethereum no longer uses proof of work mining. It uses a kind of like separate system altogether called proof of stake, which is 99.95% energy reduction compared to what it was using before. And we can prove this to them. We have statistics and facts and charts and things that we can show these people if they want to dive deeper. And we also have awesome blog posts that have already been posted before. There's one that was posted on the Ethereum Foundation blog that actually did a study on this. So we have the proof. We have a way to educate these people, but it's not going to happen if like it's all in long form. And that's what Superphiz is saying. Yeah, we need sound bites, right? We need clips. We need nice, pretty graphics. We need all that sorts of stuff. We need to start working on that. And I think Superphiz has actually started working on that. I don't have the tweet here, but if you go to his profile, you should be able to see it. I think he's working on a repository right now, kind of like an open source effort. You can kind of see, let's see. I'm just scrolling down here to see if it's here. Yes, I think it's this one. I opened the GitHub repository for media that we can share with our local media outlets related to the merge. So you can go check this out. I'll kind of like retweet this here and also open it so that I don't lose it. But basically, yeah, you can check that out here right now. He's got a collection here, and you can obviously submit your own because it's an open source kind of collection. You can submit your own pull requests, all that sorts of stuff. But yeah, Superphiz is 100% right here. Like, we need all that information ready to go. So as soon as we switch off proof of work, because it literally happens in a block, right? That's actually pretty crazy. Still, the craziest thing about the merge to me, and there's so many things that I think are crazy and awesome, is the fact that it's literally one block is proof of work, the next block is proof of stake, and that's it. Like, I mean, all the work that we're doing is just to get to that point, and it's taken so long to get to that point, but it's amazing that that's kind of like what you can simplify it down to, right? But once that transition happens, we can hit hard on it, and I'm sure the media is going to cover it anyway, like the merge obviously being a very big event. Everyone's going to be talking about it, the media will cover it, but we need to make sure they hit on that point that we want them to hit on, is the environmental point. And now, I know people have different views about this. I know people say proof of work is not bad for the environment, it encourages renewable energy, all these other kind of like things. I'm not here to debate that. I'm not here to argue for or against that. All I'm saying is that the narrative, and the narrative doesn't have to be based on fact or reality, but the narrative that exists in the mainstream is very, very anti-proof of work. I don't even know anyone from the mainstream that actually thinks that proof of work is a good thing because of the energy use. That's all. It doesn't have anything to do with anything else except the energy use. So we can kind of like change their minds here around Ethereum, because Ethereum will no longer be proof of work. They'll be slightly more open to it than they were before, but as long as we educate them, I think that we're doing a really positive thing there. So good tweet from Superphiz. Just wanted to amplify and also add my touch to it as usual. So there was this tweet from Will Sheehan here, who's the founder of Parsec Finance, who is a chart that basically shows ETH stakers by entry price. You can see basically ETH staking went live December 1st, 2020. The ETH price was around $500 or something. But before that, the deposit contract was live for, I believe, 2 weeks from November. No, it wasn't live for 2. It was live for a while, but we needed to reach kind of like the minimum by November 24th for us to launch on December 1st. But basically, you can see here that most people have deposited their ETH into kind of like into staking above $1,000 and $1,052 ETH. So 83% of people who have deposited ETH are in loss, quote unquote. Now, why I say loss, quote unquote, is because all this is showing is what the price of ETH was at the time of deposit. It's not showing when this ETH was bought or purchased. Like, just because an ETH was deposited into staking at $2,000 doesn't mean that someone bought it at $2,000. They could have bought it at $100 and decided to put it into staking, for example. So it doesn't show that, but it does show the distribution of stake. Now, you're going to need to kind of like do probably more analysis on this. You'd have to run through all the addresses, and it'd be very hard to do, especially if ETH came from centralized exchanges, to find out, as accurately as possible when someone bought their ETH and when they staked and what price they bought it for, and then when they staked it and what price they kind of like bought it for there. So this is the best information we have available to us today. So let's just say most people entered staking between $2,500 and $3,000. So kind of like that. That's what it kind of like shows here, right? It's got like a big hump there, and then it's got like I guess a fall off towards the end, and also at the beginning too. Now, I commented on this and I said, or I quote tweeted this and I said, I wonder how many people realize that this ETH can't be unlocked or sold until probably 6 to 12 months after the merge. Just got to get ETH back above 3K by then. So I think a lot of people took from this chart that there'll be people just wanting to sell immediately once withdrawals are enabled, obviously post merge. I don't think that's going to be the case for all the reasons I've outlined before. Obviously, there's that kind of like withdrawal queue, so not all staked ETH can be unlocked. As I just mentioned, you don't know what price people bought the ETH at, only what price they deposited into staking at, and ETH can be above that price by the time withdrawals are enabled. Say withdrawals take 12 months from now, right? Which is probably on the longer end of things. Like, I don't know what the price is going to be, but there is a reality where the price could definitely be back up to $3,000. Like, that's not 12 months is a relatively long period of time, and it can definitely happen. But I don't know if it's going to happen. I don't think that staking was ever designed around that, and it's not a strong argument for why people would sell or wouldn't sell, sort of thing. So I think it's just like a really interesting chart that I hadn't seen before, but I don't know how much insight we can glean from it, considering that for the reasons I just outlined, but also because like it doesn't matter what price people kind of like deposited into staking. In my mind, it doesn't really matter at all. But if you take it to kind of like as a signal of, oh, this is how much sell pressure there will be once withdrawals are enabled, I don't think that matters either. I actually think that by the time withdrawals are enabled, it's kind of like impossible to know what the price of ETH is going to be. It could be back up to 3,000, 4,000. It could be back at all-time high. Who knows, right? Like, the craziest stuff has happened. So that's why it's very, very hard to glean any real insights from this. But one thing I kind of like want to say here as well is that there are also liquid staking providers. So just because this ETH was deposited into staking and obviously it can't be withdrawn, doesn't mean the people that kind of like put the ETH through Lido or through Rocket Pool didn't offload their STETH or RETH, for example, and they can do that. I mean, a lot of Lido is like 30% of the network. So people who entered through Lido at a higher price, they could just sell their STETH. They'd probably take obviously the loss on the dollar term and also the loss on the ETH because STETH is at a discount, but they could exit if they wanted to. Obviously, that ETH stays in the beacon chain because it can't be withdrawn, but the person who originally put that ETH in is now effectively exited their position, right? So that's another thing you can't really account for. So yeah, I just thought it was an interesting chart, but definitely not something that I think is something that we can glean any real investing insights from, for example. All right, next up, we've got Ben Edgington with a new What's New in ETH2 newsletter that you can go check out here. I'll obviously link it in the YouTube description. Just a friendly reminder, I had a talk with Ben Edgington as part of the SSV Network Merge series. You can go catch that on their profile. I also spoke about that, I think, last week too. But yeah, I mean, you guys know What's New in ETH2 is like the kind of resource that I use to keep up with everything happening with the ETH2 effort, with staking, with anything got to do with like the whole kind of Ethereum roadmap, really. I mean, Ben is on top of everything. It's really, really awesome that he's still publishing this, and it's free, guys. Like, it's crazy that it's free, considering how much information he packs into these things. So you can definitely check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. It's got links to so much stuff. I mean, you could actually spend a good few hours just going through the newsletter and then going through all the links that he kind of places in here. And it's a really, really good use of your time as well. Like, it's not just a good use of your time in terms of like gleaning some investing alpha from it, but also just from kind of like increasing your knowledge. Like, I know on the refill, I talk a lot about various things, and sometimes, or a lot of the time, I won't actually give much context because I don't want to have to repeat myself every time, and I do go into the weeds a fair bit. But if you want to kind of get, even more into the weeds or kind of get additional context of things that I talk about, especially related to ETH2, then I think Ben's newsletter really, really helps with that and helps you kind of like keep on top of things. It gives you relevant links, all that sorts of stuff. So definitely go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so obviously Arbitrum last week had a bit of a snafu with obviously the gas fees getting higher on Arbitrum than they were on mainnet, and I explained why that happened last week, and then they had to pause their Odyssey initiative because of that. Now, they published a blog post here called Understanding Arbitrum Two-Dimensional Fees from Daniel Goldman, who works at Arbitrum here. So you should definitely give this a read. It basically goes into more technical detail about how Arbitrum, the fee market on Arbitrum works, or how Arbitrum handles fees, and how they're calling them two-dimensional fees. And it's only a 3-minute read, so very, very quickly here, but I did want to highlight this since I did speak about Arbitrum last week, and I also had so many people asking me about Arbitrum, especially around how the gas fees could be higher on Arbitrum than on layer 1 Ethereum, which, to be fair, is a kind of like, I guess, fair question. I don't blame people for kind of asking that, or kind of, I guess, like being concerned maybe as well. But I did explain that on last week's refill, so I'm not going to rehash it here. On one of last week's refills, you can go check it out. It's either the one on Thursday or Friday, I think, but you can go check it out. It's on the channel, and then you'll be able to find it there. But yeah, just go read this blog post after, I guess, like listening to me talk. If you've already listened to it, just go read the blog post and you'll get more details about that. All right, so we got some June 2022 stats for ENS over the weekend. So 122,000 new .eth registrations in June for a total of 1.47 million names, $3.3 million in protocol revenue, all goes to the DAO, 2,500 ETH in revenue, third highest month, 25,000 new ETH accounts with at least one ENS name, which for a total of 463,000, and 99% of OpenSea domain volume. Now you can see the chart here as they always posted. I've kind of like highlighted this chart before. What I love about this, and I think I mentioned this last time, it just shows that ENS is one of those apps that exist in a kind of like, I guess, in a place where not many apps exist, and that's the non-speculative category, where I know there is some speculation of ENS names, but for the most part, people just want to register an ENS name to tie it to their address because they want to be part of the Web3 community. And that obviously lends itself to a lot of non-speculative activity, which persists even if we're in a deep bear market like we have been since November. I mean, look, ENS's biggest months were the last 3 months. Pretty crazy, right? Which this perfectly segues me into my tweet that I wanted to talk about today that I kind of put out. And I wrote a newsletter about this too. But basically, I said, I would love to see more non-speculative Ethereum apps take off during this bear market. So far, the most popular ones I can think of that have actual active users are Gitcoin, POAP, and ENS. And then I asked, what else is there? Didn't really get great answers from the replies, and I'll probably go through some of those in a sec. But essentially, Gitcoin, you guys all know Gitcoin. They're trying to build a more open source internet. They're funding public goods. They're doing a bunch of these sorts of very non-speculative things, right? POAP, same thing. You get a POAP for different events that you attend or different online things you attend or different things that you do. You collect them. They can be used in raffles, in token gating, in decentralized kind of voting, as Sybil resistance, all that sorts of stuff. It's not inherently speculative. ENS, as I just explained, people want to register a name, attach it to their address, all that sorts of stuff. Obviously, there's a speculative element attached to each of these. With Gitcoin, people may donate to a grant because they're expecting an airdrop. With POAP, people may kind of like buy or sell them. With ENS, people may buy or sell them as well because they're NFTs. But inherently, they are not speculative based. There's not many of these apps that exist on Ethereum today. Major reason being lack of scale. Like both Gitcoin and POAP were actually kicked off layer 1 Ethereum or priced out of layer 1 Ethereum, essentially. I mean, not kicked off, but priced out, right? Because Gitcoin had to move to ZK Sync because obviously it didn't make sense to say to people, oh, well, you can donate $1, it'll get matched by $10, but to donate that $1, it's going to cost you $20, right? That obviously didn't make much sense. POAP, same thing. Like most of the POAPs that get minted are worth nothing. Like they're not worth actual kind of like money, but that's not the point of it. But the thing is that like no one's going to want to mint a POAP for like $20, $30, especially if it's not worth anything. ENS, kind of like, I guess, same thing, but ENS only exists on layer 1 Ethereum, and it's not that expensive these days, I guess. And also for people who are registering an ENS, it's like kind of like a one-off thing where you register one ENS, you tie it to your address, and that's kind of like your Web3 identity. So it's a bit different. But Gitcoin and POAP definitely got priced out of layer 1. POAP now exists on XDAI and a few other networks, I believe. They're looking at layer 2s, of course, and things like that. But that's because the things that priced them out were speculative activities. For example, it makes sense to pay a $50 fee to claim a $1,000 airdrop, and then it makes sense to go swap that airdrop for ETH and spend $50 on fees. So you spend $100 on fees for a $1,000 airdrop, you still profited $900 from that, right? So that all that activity, and especially a lot of the MAV activity, crowded out the non-speculative stuff, which means that we need more scale. And that's why these things went to other networks. Now, something like Lens Protocol is also a non-speculative Ethereum app that exists on the Polygon POS chain today. And there are some others out there, I think, but I'm not sure how active they are. I wanted to focus on things that actually have kind of like product market fit and actual active users for a long time now, which these three apps do. But I think once we get more scale, once we get kind of like transaction costs like just collapse to pennies, I mean, we already have that, but like the infrastructure needs to be built out. We need kind of like more solutions out there. Then we'll see more of these non-speculative apps, because simply put, like any economic activity that happens on layer 1 Ethereum is going to compete with each other. It doesn't matter if it's speculative or non-speculative, and the speculative stuff will probably always trump the non-speculative stuff simply because there's more of a profit opportunity there, or much more of a profit opportunity than otherwise would be. And some of the answers I got here were kind of like, I mean, Owaki from Gitcoin talked about impact DAOs. So obviously DAOs play a big part here as well, but I don't think there's any DAO that I would consider to have like active users in terms of like being a really big active collective of tens of thousands of people around the world doing stuff. We're not there yet. Hopefully we will be. And then some other kind of like things here. I mean, a lot of them were kind of like speculative based anyway. I think there's some kind of like payments apps as well, which isn't necessarily speculative based either. So that kind of like makes sense. But then some other things like Dune Analytics, which I wouldn't consider an Ethereum app. They're just they're an infrastructure provider, right? Someone, I mean, you can see the list here. I mean, like Liquidity is like Maker. Like that's a speculative thing. Most people are using Liquidity to borrow against their kind of like ETH to go kind of like leverage trade, right? JPEG, I believe, is like a kind of like an NFT ecosystem or a kind of like a cultural thing. NFTs have a lot of speculation attached to it, but you'd have to go through each and every one. I mean, Link makes sense. Link is an infrastructure. It's not speculative, but it does, I guess, like, I mean, it gets its usage from being infrastructure for speculative activities. So there are kind of like hybrid approaches here, right? So it's kind of like not an exact science. You have to think through each individual application. And then things like Polygon ID. I mean, again, I wanted to focus on things that actually have like active users. Polygon ID is very new. I don't believe it has a lot of users. Someone saying Uniswap, again, like that's speculative stuff. Like I think people actually get the wrong idea of what I meant here. Maybe I should have expanded a little bit, but it kind of like confirmed my theory that there really isn't that many non-speculative things. And the reason why I would like to see more of it is because the reason we have such violent market cycles is because it's all speculation. Like you can't have I guess like a healthy, sustainable crypto ecosystem for the long term if everything's speculative. Like if we go up based on speculation, then we're going to come down because of the fact that going up was based on nothing fundamental, nothing real. It was hollow, right? And with all that speculation came new users, but they all left as soon as the money ran out, right? As soon as the speculation stopped rewarding them, they left. And we lose basically 90+% of our users every single time this happens. Now, obviously, we only gain them because of the speculative stuff, but if we want to move past that, we need to build more non-speculative stuff so people actually come into this ecosystem and use things, whether it's a bull or bear market. Like, I honestly really am sick of these bull bear markets. Like, I've been through enough of them at this point, and I feel like we really need to just move past it. But I do feel like the main limiting factor has been scale, and we've got it. It's coming. I mean, there's more coming. Like, it's live. We have non-speculative apps that have product market fit, so we know they exist. We just need to build more of them, right? And I think we will, but it may take another cycle or two. I'm not expecting the cycles to end anytime soon, but I would really love to just try and move past it as much as possible, because it's not healthy. It's not healthy for it to be like this all the time. It's not healthy for the crypto ecosystem to basically go through massive boom and bust. Like, it's not just a small boom and bust, guys. This is a massive thing where we literally go through like a massive growth phase for like a year and a half, and then we have like a 2+ year depression. Like, that's not how a proper economy should function. It's not how a proper ecosystem should function long term. It's fine for a nascent ecosystem where there's a lot of speculation going on because no one really knows what's going to take off and not take off. But long term, it needs to be based on fundamentals. It needs to be less speculative. And I think we'll get there. And I think we'll get there because of the scale. But yeah, anyway, those are my thoughts on that. Last couple of things to get through before I wrap it up today. So speaking of, I guess, like applications, speculative or otherwise, ChainLinkGod had a really great thread out over the weekend where he starts off by saying, tokenized real-world assets is how DeFi will scale to a global level, a thread covering my thoughts on the opportunities and challenges this presents. So you can read his thread for a full breakdown of this, but the thing is that, like, real-world assets, people say, oh, real-world assets on-chain can't work for this, and this reason. I'm like, okay. Whenever they say that, I say to them, what's the biggest app in crypto today? And they may say, oh, Uniswap or something else, right? Or some other like big app, like the Curve or Maker or kind of Compound, whatever big app there is at the time. Depends who they are. I mean, obviously, if they've got bags, they'll shield their own bags, but whatever. And I immediately say to them, no, it's stablecoins. Stablecoins is literally the biggest application that exists across Ethereum, across every alt L1, every kind of ecosystem. I mean, it's the biggest thing in crypto. What is a stablecoin, right? Where are most of those stablecoins? Not DAI, right? DAI is big, but it's not the biggest by far. There are other synthetic stablecoins out there. There are other ones that are kind of like are trying to be decentralized. But what are the biggest? Centralized stablecoins. Okay. What are they? They're real-world assets because the centralized stablecoins are backed by US dollars in a bank account. That's a real-world asset. So when people say to me, oh, they don't exist, they can't work, I'm like, they do work, and they're the biggest app in crypto. So reading ChainLinkGod's thread was great because I was like, okay, well, I mean, obviously I see the vision here. Like, it makes total sense to me. People can keep saying that it won't work, but we have undeniable proof that it works, and it's huge. And I think stablecoins are going to be even bigger than we can imagine. Like, they're big today. I feel like they're just going to keep getting bigger and bigger because at the end of the day, payments is the kind of like the heart of an economic engine. Like, people buying and selling things, like, that is the heart of it at the end of the day. And what do you need payments for? You need payments to enable that trade to occur. That's why stablecoins are so popular. That's why they're going to continue to be popular. That's why ETH being used as money is actually quite popular, especially in the NFT ecosystem, because you need a unit of account. You need a medium of exchange to process all this economic activity. But yeah, without going off too much on a tangent there, you should definitely read ChainLinkGod's thread because it makes a lot of sense. But next time someone says to you that there are no kind of like real world applications, you can say to them, yes, there is. Stablecoins, biggest application in crypto by far, right? Huge volumes, huge market cap, growing hugely over time. Doesn't matter if it's a bear or bull, they are definitely growing over time, and have plenty of growth potential left, right? So you can say that to them next time they tell you that. All right, finally here, Mahalo from Polygon shared some interesting news where he said, after Instagram, Facebook officially begins testing a Polygon integration. If deployed widely, anyone in the world will be able to connect their Polygon wallet to Facebook and display NFTs as posts. Mass adoption infrastructure in the making. And he's right here to say that, and you guys know I'm an advisor to Polygon, so I'm not going to get too shilly here, but I think that Polygon is really the only or one of the only teams in the Ethereum ecosystem that is on the forefront of bringing in outside kind of like people, outside organizations, outside companies into crypto, not just with kind of like Facebook and Instagram and other Web2 giants, but also with gaming, like, and also with kind of, I guess like payments, because they obviously partnered with Stripe. Stripe the other kind of like month. Right, they're doing so much BD effort on these sorts of things that a lot of people doesn't seem to be paying attention to, maybe because it's a bear market. But guys, like, this is huge stuff. Like, you may think it's boring because it's not like Web3, it's Web2, and it's like just bridging them in. But like, this is how we get mass adoption. This is how we get more people involved. This is how we get more companies and institutions and developers involved. We need them to come from the Web2 world because, I mean, everyone coming into Web3, like most people coming into Web3 are coming from that other world. Like, there are obviously people coming into Web3 and being Web3 first, but the majority of people aren't Web3 first from my experience. So we need to definitely bring them in from other organizations, and we need to bring these organizations on board as well, which I think is really, really cool. And I think that's something Polygon definitely excels at here. But as I said, don't want to get too shilly. I'm going to end it there for today. So thank everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel. And just wanted to quickly mention, we hit 20,000 subscribers. So awesome. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Let's go for 30K next. That'll make my day, make my year, make my month for sure. So yeah, I'll talk to you all in tomorrow's refuel. Thanks everyone.